Let's talk about your mental health. Actually, let's talk about our mental health here in the United States of America as a culture. My name's Christina Manis. I am a licensed pharmacist. I've been licensed for over 25 years. I own my own wellness center where I currently teach yoga and I do wellness coaching as well as some other services. So, mental health is such a ginormous topic that there's actually going to be several parts to this particular podcast. So, getting into it right away and just jumping in, I'm only going to be able to cover a couple of topics today because it is such an in-depth topic. So, defining what I mean by broaching this topic of our mental health, there's so much to it. There's our emotional health, there is our energetic health. How energized do we feel? Are we exhausted? There's mental health in terms of self-talk and affirmations, the relationship that we have with ourselves, our relationships with other people, and that penetrates every aspect of our life, right? And when we think about mental health, and the big part of it is where are the parts in us that we struggle with and how do we label it? So that brings me to the first part of what I want to talk about today. Number one is removing the stigma surrounding our mental health. Because of the labels, there is so much stigma surrounding this. And even with all of the information available online today, which is so much more than was when I was younger, with all of what we can look up and the shared experiences, which I think is just so valuable, at least if we are staring into a screen. With social media and streaming, we actually really have the ability to connect with one another, even if we're in different parts of the world. So I think there is something to be said about the awesomeness of the connection that we have through technology. And I know sometimes there's also a lot of misinformation that gets passed along that pathway. And those algorithms are for a different audience. But here, when we're talking about our own wellness and self-care and mental health, we really have to remove the stigma associated with that because we all have that, I'm going to say innately. So since we were born, most of us, in the United States of America, and some of you watching may have been born in other parts of the world, but American culture, you certainly do know that we do have a lot of stigmas attached to certain lifestyles, and mental health is one of those things where, who wants to be labeled as crazy? And even in the protected disabilities that are there, anxiety is one of those. And there are so many issues with mental health that could go wrong for any given person, that it could be incapacitating and cause you not to be able to function normally and actually carry out normal job duties that somebody else would not struggle with. So there is a lot to it, and the stigma surrounding it actually is very inhibiting for everybody, because those of us that do function pretty well still feel this sense of, I can't talk about all the anxiety I feel or where I struggle, because we feel that we're alone, even in this world of information and technology. And so that's one of the things I feel getting on a podcast and talking about the subject, just getting out there and having the conversation, starts to remove the stigma associated with it, because people can see that somebody like me, who is 50 years old, who has already been, somewhat successful by society's standards, at least. I enjoy my life and I love my life. I can be on this podcast talking to you, admitting that I have struggled with my mental health my entire life. I have had crippling anxiety. I was quite manic. I don't know, I'm going to say all the way up until maybe about 26 or 27 years old, and maybe even well into my 30s. I don't know that I got a handle on it until, maybe my mid to late 30s. And it did cause me some issues, but I was able to be a highly productive person. And so there wasn't anything going on that I don't think anybody in society would say, oh, that person is clearly crazy. Isn't that what we call it when we experience mental illness? And I've even said I'm a hot mess. I say that sometimes, not so much now in my life, but I will say, in the past 15 years, I can't even tell you how many times I must have used that expression. I don't mind being called crazy, and I can use that term with humor now. However, people do not want to be labeled anything taboo like crazy or even labeled as disabled, right? So our mental health carries with it this sort of hush hush, don't really share the struggles, or when we do, we don't share the things about how this affects us and makes us struggle with doing normal everyday stuff like going to the grocery store, perhaps, traveling, being in an airport, perhaps, getting through some of the things that other people that don't struggle with mental health issues as much find easy to just breeze through these parts of life. And so it makes people feel isolated and alone when they don't feel that they can truly express who they are and express that I have a problem with anxiety. I have a problem with social anxiety. So it's hard for me to travel. It's hard for me to go to the grocery store. And if I get thrown off, and even if I get thrown off at work, I don't process things correctly, and it can really interfere with me being able to focus. Okay, so, and all of that actually is very true for me. I just said that as an example, but that's true for me, and it very well could have been my example at any given moment along the way in my own life. And there were times in my life, although I was able to be very productive and successful in my career, but there were certainly times when my anxiety was visible to colleagues and coworkers, and it did affect the way that I could process information or remain focused. And luckily for myself, if I came to a situation at work where I knew that I wasn't properly focused, I had colleagues around me at those moments that could buffer me, and I could step away and just keep myself and everybody else safe. So, but a lot of us actually have to work through that. There are moments where we have to be the one to remain focused even when we're experiencing extreme anxiety in our life or depression in our life. Let's say somebody really close to us passes away and we still have to get through the workday. Grief is very heavy, and that can cause temporary depression and lack of focus and, brain fog, and that can affect us at our job. And here we are as a culture, it's taboo to talk about, mental illness. We don't want to be labeled, especially in today's world where, these labels are being used as a way to, kind of, I don't know what it is, attack or justify bad behaviors. I'm not even really sure, but we're getting so strange with these culture wars and everything else that we go through in society that right now I think it's really important just to open up and talk about the regular day-to-day stuff that we face, especially if you're a parent or a grandparent. Okay, that's incredibly stressful. So nobody has to be labeled I'm mentally ill for the rest of my life just because I've struggled or I am struggling right now. Or maybe you do have a lifelong struggle ahead of you. But the whole point is we don't have to say that we're ill, but we can say that our mental health is just as important to us as every other aspect of our health. So if we're incredibly out of shape with our body and we want to get in shape so we can feel great, It's no different with our mental health. It's just so abstract to be able to define exactly what it is, and not all of us do have time to go to a therapist and figure that out. A lot of times we go to a regular family doctor and they put us on an antidepressant. Some of those antidepressants work really great, and some medications in combinations with others are not so great. Some medications, even by themselves, are great, but they cause weight gain, and there are better options. So as we are navigating through how are we going to handle our own lives, I, definitely think that some of the medications available for mental health are amazing. I do think it's important to find what is best for you, because at some points in life, if you're anything like me, I got to a point where, I did go on something for anxiety, and it was amazing. I thought, wow, I should have been on this for decades, but I did gain weight. And at that time I thought, well, I'd rather be chubby and happy, right, than thin and just all anxious. And as a licensed pharmacist, I knew better than to just settle for that. But I didn't want to make a bunch of changes at the time. And then once I got to a place in my life where I didn't want to be chubby and happy, I just wanted to be physically fit and happy. And I knew that I could have whatever I wanted because I had worked through a lot of my issues by that time. I had my medication adjusted, and, I love the life that I have right now. And I do think that some of the medications for mental health are really, really helpful, and they can help you get through if you have access to that. And if you have a doctor and you're, using the westernized healthcare system, then, there are ways to use that and feel great and use it properly. And you can always talk to somebody like myself to sort through what's your best approach to it. But the first things first is it's removing that stigma, right? So that's number one. So I think starting conversations about it, being open about it, even with your posts on social media, it can be really helpful for you to just let other people know that they're not alone by posting what you're experiencing. And then also, the next thing I'm going to talk about is we don't have to figure anything out, right? So as we're posting on social media and encouraging other people and saying, you're not alone, so that we don't feel so isolated, like, oh my gosh, I almost feel like bad or guilty or something about my issues. Other people are going through like these bigger struggles. No, write to people to say like, you're not alone, but also guess what? We don't have to figure anything out, right? We don't have to fix anything either, because some of us do kind of feel like, well, I'm so anxious, but I have such a great life. I don't want to complain. And, I'm trying to figure out what's making me feel this way. And that's maybe a part of why we don't share things online, because I love my life. I feel like I have a really good life. I feel grateful for what I have, and I'm very blessed for the life that I do have. Yet my mental health has been a struggle. And I think sharing that with other people online is great, as I said. And also knowing that it doesn't mean that I have figured anything out, or that there is a fix, or I'm trying to tell you that if you take my advice or you go the path that I went, that it's going to fix something for you. So I think another part of our mental health is kind of ditching the weight of thinking that we have to figure out, well, why am I struggling? Because I feel like I have a pretty good life. Okay. Or ditching the guilt, because guilt does not serve anybody. It serves no purpose. It has no benefit to anybody, right? So you don't have to feel guilty about the fact that you feel like, oh, I should be happy because there's people that are suffering or have been through worse experiences than I have. And so what right do I have to be anxious? Like, my childhood wasn't that bad. These are the types of thoughts where we beat ourselves up all the time. So, not beating ourselves up with the stigma, removing that, but also not putting the weight on ourselves with our mental health to think that we have to fix anything or figure anything out. Sure, we may want to go ahead and try to do some self-care. That is not the same as trying to fix ourselves or anybody else, and it's not the same as trying to figure something out. Self-care is simply taking care of ourselves. And so that's where we have to relax back into this and say, okay, what I'm going through is normal. I'm a human. There are a lot of things going on, even worldwide, that are causing anxiety for so many of us. Okay, so having some issues right now is completely normal. And then we don't really have to figure out why that is, because why wouldn't there be issues, right, with our mental health at this point? We're human. We live in a crazy world that seems to only be getting crazier. So again, cutting ourselves some slack on that. So those are the first two things. And then the third thing I'm going to bring up for today's conversation is that there's nobody watching you. There's nobody to prove yourself to, right? There's nobody that is judging you as much as you think. So many of my clients that come in for wellness coaching, which is like life coaching, they have this sense of, I'm going to go back to guilt again, because that is one of the biggest things, where they feel like they should be doing more, and they feel like they have not lived up to the expectations of, usually it's family members. If it's a younger client, it can be parents, but even in older clients, it can still be, I didn't live up to my parents' expectations. Or it could be that they feel like their kids are disappointed in them, or they don't have a close relationship with grandchildren because of something that happened with, parents, and it could be a divorce or whatnot. There are so many things that people come in with, and they actually have all of this weight and sort of like shame on them over issues that are completely normal, and they feel as if there is some kind of, I guess, still a parent watching them, or somebody that is judging them, and that they're not doing good enough, right? And so this is such an unnecessary weight. Again, the unnecessary weights that we put on ourselves that really are part of our mental health, our thought process. It seems like we are just constantly trying to prove ourselves to someone. And again, we're adults. Why do we feel this way? Why do we feel this way? And some of us feel without purpose, right? But when we're asking those questions about, like, what am I doing with my life? And we're just feeling restless, and we know we don't feel quite right. But who and what are we actually living for? What don't we feel right about? What presence is there that we have to feel guilt about anything in our lives? The mistakes that we made, the way that we're living now, the stuff that we've procrastinated on, any of these things that we get down and hard on ourselves about, this causes what's called mental weight. And this is unnecessary heaviness and mental weight. So one of the things as adults in American culture that we really have to start grasping onto is that we are the adult. Nobody is watching us. We don't have to prove anything to our parents, to our family members, our siblings, to our children, to our grandchildren. We don't have to prove anything to anybody. We can go out and live and breathe and be free. And we're not answering to anybody. We're completely what's called sovereign. And so that doesn't mean we're an anarchist and we go out and, just try to break the law. We're law abiding, but we're in charge of ourselves. We are the boss of ourselves in any given situation. So even at work, we do not need to be thinking that somebody's watching all the time and I'm going to lose my job because of A, B, C, and D. Because if you're a human that worries a lot, even if everything is going great, you'll find something to worry about, right? And everything could even be going great at work, but yet there'll be something lurking in the back of your mind, like you're about to be in trouble. And we use that phrase a lot at work. And that's something that I feel like no adult in the workforce should ever be using or feeling like you're going to get in trouble. That's not the frame that we should be coming from. We should be coming from the angle of we are running the country. We are the workforce. We are keeping everything going. And so we're in charge of us, and we show up and we do a good job. We're in charge of us. And in life, it's the same thing. Once you're out into the adult world and you're navigating through life, you're in charge of yourself. And you may think that there's so many judgments coming from other people, but that's not helpful, and it's heavy, because also everybody else could be feeling the same exact way, like they're being judged, right? And so we feel this unnecessary weight instead of just simply living and enjoying life, figuring out what makes us happy, and just doing what we want to do at any given moment, and responsibly living and making good choices that lead to good outcomes. All of that is completely possible alongside enduring the natural human weight of grief and loss, because we all will go through that at various times in our life. Change is a constant. Nothing is permanent. So, each one of us will lose somebody close to us at some point. And even if we had our home destroyed by a natural disaster, a fire or a hurricane or something of that sort, those things are going to cause us to feel some sense of weight. But if we're mentally, emotionally, energetically, and physically healthy, we can get through those things much easier than if we're already experiencing unnecessary weight, and then something happens where we just start to downward spiral. We start to feel that we have bad luck and why me, and we get into a negative mind loop, which then again is what defines poor mental health, because we get into a negative mind loop. So the new way with our mental health is getting our mind and our thoughts to be higher vibrational thoughts, higher frequency, bringing ourselves up to a higher frequency and living from that perspective. And you're going to be in the same world and in the same house, but once the mental health starts to elevate and you feel lighter and lighter with thoughts and emotions, and your energy then starts to feel lighter, your body will start to actually lighten up as well. Everything follows along because everything is interconnected. So the three things that I touched on, I just want to reiterate today as far as the mental health segment goes, is just to remove the stigma, start the conversations, have the conversations, post about it, write about it, right? Share your experiences. Share your experiences about your relationships, your friendships. And it's not like dirty laundry, so I'm not saying share drama online or anything of that sort. What I'm saying is definitely share your mental health struggles, your mental health victories, your testimonials, the things that worked for you. Share with other people so that they know that they are not alone. Share with other people to help remove the stigma surrounding mental health issues. So that's the number one. And then the number two thing is you don't have to figure anything out. We don't have to fix anyone or figure anything out. And a big part of this too is we love to obsess about the other person, right? If it's our partner or our ex or our kid or our parent, we think we know what's best, and we might be obsessing about their mental health a lot. And we don't have to figure them out, and we don't have to fix them. We don't even have to fix ourselves. We have to accept that we are all human. And with that, especially in the present day society where There are now over 8 billion of us on the planet, which has never been the case before. So many of us, so much energy, right? We don't have to fix ourselves. We just have to realize what we are, and that is human. We do make mistakes. We do have a full range of emotions, and what we can do to help ourselves and everybody else is tap into that thing called self-awareness, where, sure, we're going to be aware of ourselves and we're going to be aware of, okay, I do feel angry. That's okay. That's one of the human emotions. I do feel like a lot of pressure on me right now. Okay, I acknowledge that. That's a human emotion. I do feel really anxious when I go to the grocery store. Okay, I acknowledge that. I don't have to feel ashamed about it or fix it or try to figure out why I feel like that, because maybe the root cause doesn't matter as much as reaching out for help and using some of the resources available to you to experience lighter emotions, better thoughts. And there certainly are so many resources out there. So just, you can get to those resources faster if you're not bogged down by trying to figure something out or trying to fix something. You just simply reach out for what is going to help you, and you start there. And you might not hit it the first time. Let's say you do decide it's a therapist. You might not hit the right therapist the first couple times, but make sure you don't settle for the wrong one at the same time, right? And again, you don't have to go in there and figure anything out, but it's a step forward. And that's where we're just going forward. And with our mental health, again, it's the same thing as if you had a knee replacement. Each day it's a step forward, and sometimes literally, as far as building back your strength. So it's the same with any kind of wellness or self-care that we're going to implement in our lives. We want to do what's going to benefit us, what's going to have us making progress and feeling self-confident and becoming empowered. And so certainly there's a lot of pathways to get there, right? Without having to think that anything is wrong in order to use those pathways, right? So they're simply fast tracks that humans can use to get to our next level of personal growth and empowerment. It feels so great when you get to a level of self-confidence and empowerment. And that's one of the best things that good mental health can do for us. So that's the whole point in talking about it and giving guidance on how to get optimal mental health. Okay, so then the number 3 and final thing that I talked about today is nobody is watching you. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You're the adult in the situation. You're in the driver's seat of your own life. So once we break through that barrier and we realize that we're not living to please somebody else, we're not being watched or monitored, and we don't have to live up to the expectations of some invisible force or even some force in our lives that seems to be motivating us or trying to inspire us to do more or be more than we actually want to be, or to do or be something different than we actually want to be. Once we break through that and we realize that there's nobody else we need to please, we are reaching for and going for the life of our wildest dreams, and we are only reaching for the measure of success that we want by our own standards and for what's going to make us happy. That right there is sweet freedom. And that is a great part of releasing and getting back to some clarity and some good mental energy and positive thoughts. And it's all about getting to higher vibrations and higher frequency thoughts. And so we're all going to get there together. And this is a good place to stop for today. And I thank you for listening. I'm actually going to be, as I said, doing a lot of other videos and podcasts that will fall under the umbrella of mental health. And I am going to be bringing in a couple of people to interview, which makes it super interesting. So I know one of those we'll be looking forward to is that on grief recovery. And then I have another person planning on interviewing about relationships and domestic abuse within relationships. So those should be interesting topics to breach as well. And who knows how many different podcasts and or videos will be a part of the mental health segment, but definitely looking forward to getting into this topic and sharing experiences, hearing from other people, and just helping one another out to get through the crazy world we live in and the crazy times we're in. We can certainly use all the help that we can get. Okay, take care, guys.